In the year 1172, somewhere in the territory of Mongolia, a 9-year-old boy named Temujin is taken to the Merkit clan to choose his future wife. His father, Sergei, stole the bride of one of the tribesmen, and since then the two groups have been at war. In an attempt to restore peace, he wants to get his son to marry a young woman from the Merkit clan in order to unite the families. On the way, they decide to stop at a friendly tribe for the night and plan to continue their journey the next day. That day Temujin meets Borte, a 10-year-old girl, and falls in love with her. He then informs his father that he wishes to choose a bride right there, from among the young girls of the clan. Sergei forbids it and orders the boy to marry a Merkit, as he wishes to use it as a peace treaty. However, after hearing his son's real wish, the man decides to give in to his request and allows Temujin to choose his bride from that tribe. The next morning, the leader of that clan gathers some girls and allows the boy to choose, among them, his future wife. After considering them one by one, Temujin chooses Borte, as he planned to do from the beginning, and the young woman accepts him as her future husband. That same day, the boy and his father return home, but before he leaves, Temujin gives Borte the bone of a white raven and promises that in 5 years he will return to marry her. On the way back, they are surprised by a storm and need to stop for shelter. All the men are frightened, but Sergei claims that the thunder indicates that Tengri, their god, is upset. All the Mongols are afraid of Tengri's wrath, but the man promises that he will protect his son. In that instant, Temujin no longer feels fear of the storm. The next day, they continue their journey until they come across the camp of warriors from an enemy tribe. Since he was trying to strengthen ties with other clans, Sergei decides to be friendly and joins them to eat. One of the servants brings some milk to Sergei. In return, the man also gives a portion of milk for the enemy clan leader to drink. As an act of trust, they both take the drink at the same time and, after resting, Sergei and his men continue on their way. However, hours later, Temujin's father begins to feel ill and falls off his horse. At this point, everyone discovers that the milk he had drunk was poisoned. Before he dies, Sergei names his son as the new leader of his tribe and Temujin is given the title Khan. When the small group arrives in their village and announces the death of their master, some followers revolt and start stealing everything that once belonged to Sergei, even his herd. Olin, his wife, tries to stop them, but Targutai manages to take control of that clan and threatens to kill Temujin so that he will not want to take revenge when he grows up. His mother orders the boy to flee, but Targutai's men manage to capture him. They intend to kill the boy, but Olin reminds them that Mongol law forbids them to kill children. Therefore, Targutai leaves with the promise that he will return to exterminate Temujin when the boy is older. Therefore, the boy must run away to hide. He is on his way to the sacred mountain where he can ask the god Tengri for help. His main objective is to survive that winter. However, while walking over the snow, the ice breaks and Temujin falls into the water. When he finally manages to get out of there, the young man no longer has the strength to walk and is rescued by Jamukha. The boy is the son of the Khan of his tribe, and his greatest goal is to become the next leader. Temujin thanks him for saving him and asks if, from that moment on, Jamukha would accept to be his brother. The boy then takes a bowl of milk and makes a cut on his hand. Then he spills a few drops of blood. Temujin does the same and, after drinking that drink, they seal the pact that makes them blood brothers. Taichar, Jamukha's younger brother, is nearby and watches the ritual. From that day on, Temujin moves in with his new family, but Targutai finds him and goes after him. The young man tries to escape, but is captured and taken to a new clan. There, he is chained and no one even tries to free him. To help Temujin survive, an old man decides to feed him and helps him get rid of the insects that were devouring the boy alive. One night, while everyone is hiding from Tengri's fury, the young man manages to escape, for he has learned from his father not to fear the storm. 14 years later, while wandering in the desert, Temujin tries to escape from a group of men who, after capturing him, drag him back to the camp where Targutai has become Khan. In order to cause his enemies suffering, the man decides to tie him to a wooden stake, so Temujin will slowly die. Seeing him in that condition again, the old man approaches him to feed him. One night, while the people are celebrating, Temujin attacks the guard and manages to knock him out. He uses the wooden plate that is stuck in his neck to shatter that guy's skull and runs away as far away as possible. The next morning, he meets a horse tamer who recognizes him and helps him free himself. Borshu then allows the man to take one of his horses and go on his way. Temujin thanks him and leaves. He is determined to find his fiancée, whom he should have married 9 years ago. When he arrives at the camp, Bort's father tells him that the young woman thought her fiancé had deserted her and probably no longer wants to marry him. Just then, Borte appears and says that she will marry Temujin. The woman says that although several years have passed since they last saw each other, she was sure that the boy would come back for her. Together they travel to the ancient village of Temujin, where her mother and brothers live. Olin presents her daughter-in-law with a silver necklace, and the young woman gives her a valuable fur coat. After dinner, the couple heads for the mountains. That night, some warriors from the Merkit clan appear at Olin's house. Somehow, they found out that Temujin got a wife and were after her. Seeing that the couple was not there, the barbarians burn the place down and leave. The next morning, the group finds the couple. They try to escape, but Temujin is hit by an arrow in the back. To prevent her husband from being killed, the woman frightens off the horse and stays behind. Soon after, she is captured and Merkit informs her that, years ago, Temujin's father stole his bride. Since then, he has sworn revenge. Since Esuge had died, the man decided to steal his son's wife and claims that Borte now belongs to him. Meanwhile, Temujin's horse takes him back to his mother's house. As soon as he recovers, he goes to pay his brother a visit. Jamukha has become the leader of his tribe and a very powerful man. After giving him a gift, Temujin asks his brother to help him recover Borte. Initially, Jamukha refuses to go to war over a woman and even advises his brother to find another wife. However, Temujin claims that Borte is his only wife and Jamukha decides to help him, but the rescue will not take place until the following year. Months later, the big day arrives. As soon as they enter the Merkit territory, they are attacked. The two tribes exchange several sword blows and even use forks to pierce the guts of their enemies. Jamukha is attacked by one of the savages and has his shield destroyed. Immediately, Temujin goes to his brother's aid and pierces his opponent's chest with his sword. The battle continues, and while his allies are fighting the Merkit soldiers, Temujin takes a mask and infiltrates the village. He enters a few tents looking for Borte, but is soon discovered and must hurry. Some men appear to attack him, but Temujin manages to get rid of them. The moment he finds his wife, he discovers that she is pregnant and the man who captured her is dead in the next bed with his throat cut. Temujin embraces her and Borte says that she was sure he would come looking for her. He states that her son will also be his son, and they leave that place together with their allies. That night, the group celebrates their victory and Jamukha asks his brother to stand by his side and become a member of his clan. He promises to make Temujin his right-hand man, but the man says he cannot accept the offer, as he is already used to being his own master. After eating, they begin to divide the goods they stole from the enemy camp. One of the servants tells them that Jamukha took most of the items and asks how they should divide the rest. Temujin then states that he will keep the 10th part and directs the warriors to divide the rest, without forgetting the families of those who have been killed in battle. The next day, in the morning, Temujin wakes up before his brother and joins his wife. Together they plan their way and decide to leave while most of the men are still asleep. When Jamukha gets up, he realizes that his brother is gone and is informed that, along with him, several of his men are also gone. Upon hearing this, Jamukha is furious and, together with Taichar, goes after Temujin. When he finds him, he asks why his men have abandoned him. The group claims that, unlike Jamukha, Temujin is generous to his warriors. The man regrets that he cannot return his brother's men, for the Mongols are free to choose their master. Frustrated, Jamukha returns home and Taichar says he will return for his horses. A few days later, this promise is fulfilled and Jamukha's men invade Temujin's camp. To prevent the horses from being stolen, his servant shoots an arrow into the chest of one of the thieves. Soon after, he discovers that the guy he just killed is Taichar, Jamukha's younger brother. Later, they tell Temujin about what happened, and the person in charge states that he will deliver his head to Jamukha in order to avoid a war. However, his master forbids him to do so. Upon being told of Jamukha's loss, Targutai offers to help him take revenge. In return, he wants only Temujin's head. After sharpening his sword, Jamukha uses the instrument to shave his hair and prepares for war. Days later, one of Temujin's servants warns that Jamukha and his men are approaching the camp. Winning that war would be almost impossible, because there were 10 enemies for every one of them. So he orders everyone to climb the mountains and pile up a lot of debris to form a barrier. The archers prepare to make the attack from a distance and Temujin orders Kasar to take some men to protect their families. As the warriors bid farewell to their families, Temujin bids farewell to his wife and son. Before leaving, Borte returns the bone her husband had given her as a gift and asks the man not to forget them. Minutes later, Jamukha and Targutai appear with their warriors. The battle begins and Temujin's men start off with an advantage. However, soon after, they begin to lose because they are outnumbered. Even after the death of his companions, Temujin continues to fight until the last moment when he is surrounded by the spears of his enemies and captured. Targutai reminds Jamukha that the man promised to deliver his brother to him, but the master decides not to keep his word. He directs Temujin to beg for his forgiveness, that way he could let him live. However, his pride prevents him from doing so, and Temujin claims that he is not a beggar. Therefore, Jamukha decides to send his brother to a slave trader for forced labor, along with the other survivors who previously served him. Even in that situation, Temujin tries to make his companions not give up and not lose hope. A year later, the man is sold as a forced labor servant to a very rich king. The monk accompanying him asks his master not to take that servant into his kingdom, for in doing so he would bring great evil to the people of Tenggit. Still, he decides to buy him and keeps Temujin all the time inside a cage, without food and water. Even the guard dogs that are chained below his cage live in a more dignified way than he does. In order not to starve to death, Temujin must kill the animals that appear in his cell for food. Besides being humiliated, the man is treated as a tourist attraction, because all the tourists and visitors to the city want to see him. During a heavy rainstorm, the monk appears and asks Temujin to not destroy the monastery, when the time of war come, where several holy books were kept. In return for this favor, Temujin asks the monk to go in search of his clan and deliver that bone to Borte. Then, the old man assures him that he will find them and prepares to make the long journey. After walking alone in the desert for several days, the monk succumbs to the heat. His body is burned and dehydrated, and he no longer has the strength to walk. At that moment, the man falls to the ground and never gets up again. In the middle of the night, Borte gets up and wakes Juchi. She says it's time for them to leave. Days later, they find the monk's body and Borte recognizes the bone the man was carrying. At that moment, she is sure that her husband is alive and decides to go look for him. The woman waits for a caravan to pass by to give them a ride. Coincidentally, they are taken by the merchant who sold Temujin to the king. After cremating the old monk, they get on their camels and start a new long journey under the burning sun. Years later, Borte manages to find her husband and Temujin soon recognizes her, even though the woman's face is almost completely covered. That same night, Borte takes the key with the guard, and in exchange gives him the silver chain she received from her mother-in-law. She then throws the key into Temujin's cell, and the man manages to free himself from that terrible place. Borte helps her husband escape and takes him to her carriage. In this instant he is able to see his son Juchi again and meets Mongol, his wife's youngest daughter, who is now also considered his daughter. Weeks later, the small family finds a quiet, secluded place to live. There they build their house. Temujin's greatest wish is that one day the Mongols will have one master on earth, so that they can live together in harmony. While the children are playing, Borte talks to her husband and reveals that in recent years the Mongols have been worse than ever. They only think of killing and stealing, not even the children are being spared. Upon hearing this, Temujin claims that he knows what to do to straighten them out. The man gets on his horse and asks his wife to return home with their children. Frustrated, the woman asks when he intends to return, for every time they are separated they go years without seeing each other. However, she is not able to stop him. Temujin travels for several days until he reaches the sacred mountain, where he asks for Tengri's help to save the Mongols. He intends to rule his people and make them live under laws that prevent them from killing women and children, force them to pay their debts and fight their enemies to the death. Finally, the last law that the Mongols should obey is to never betray their Khan. Temujin devotes the next few years of his life to this mission until, in 1196, 4 years later, he manages to assemble a large army. All those warriors were Mongols who were attracted by his words and decided to support him. Temujin and his men wish to unite the people, but Jamukha wishes to divide them. Now the time has come for the final battle, and the winner will become the ruler of all Mongolia. Jamukha's army is much bigger, but Temujin has a strategy. The only thing he needs to win this battle is for Tengri, the god of the big blue sky, to be on his side. One of his archers launches the first arrow as a warning sign and manages to hit it close to the leader of the enemy group. Meanwhile, Jamukha realizes that his brother has good soldiers and that it will not be easy to win this war. Targutai is on his side and, based on the size of his troops, assures him that the duel is already won. Jamukha then orders the first group of soldiers to advance. On Temujin's side, a few warriors are sent to fight hundreds of enemies. They move forward with their horses and use 2 swords to eliminate as many opponents as possible in a short period of time. Temujin's allies enter the crowd tearing the guts of their opponents. They then use their swords to eliminate them one by one. However, since they are outnumbered, they are soon defeated and the few survivors return in the direction of Temujin and his men. The enemies go after them, but are eliminated by the archers, who are hiding, just waiting for the enemy to approach to execute him. In this way, Temujin's army manages to defeat most of its opponents without suffering major losses. Enraged at suffering a crushing defeat, Jamukha orders all his soldiers to advance at once. Just then, the clouds begin to darken and a storm approaches. The sky closes in completely and lightning strikes bewilder the enemy soldiers. Most of them decide to retreat and cower on the ground. Then Temujin and his men rush toward the enemy army and win their victory. The next morning, when Temujin is already named the master of the Mongols, 2 men approach him and inform him that they have eliminated Targutai, his former Khan. The man was Temujin's greatest enemy and tried to escape after he won the war. Those men expect to be rewarded for their act, but are surprised when the new leader orders them to be executed. From now on, betraying their Khan is a serious infraction of the law, and those 2 men become an example to others. After talking to the opponents who fought against him in that war, Temujin orders them all to be incorporated into his army. Some soldiers capture Jamukha and deliver him into the hands of their leader. Upon seeing his brother, Temujin asks what he would do if he were in his place, and Jamukha immediately says he would kill him. However, Temujin decides to forgive him and lets him go. Jamukha states that his brother will regret this decision, as he is allowing his enemy to live. After the war, the leader of the Mongols meets again with his family and states that he will soon take Juchi to choose his bride. Months later, he says goodbye to Borte once again, but assures her that he will always return to her. Temujin prepares for a new battle, as there are still many tribes to conquer. 10 years later, in 1206, he becomes the Khan of all Mongols and becomes known as the Great Genghis Khan. The ancient kingdom of Tenget was wiped off the face of the earth, but the monastery was preserved thanks to the monk who sacrificed his life to deliver the bone to Borte.